Hello students, hope you are all safe. Before we start today's lesson, my earnest request to you, please strictly abide by the government directives and follow the basic personal hygiene habits in this present moment of crisis. Please stay at home and behave responsibly. Well, now talking about our syllabus, we could not complete our reading of Tinternabe as the classes got shut down. But today we shall not continue with Tinternabe. We have one more poem by William Wordsworth to read from CC9 Group A. It is Ode on Intimations of Immortality. We shall read this poem today. After that, we shall get back to Tinternabe and finish the rest of the poem in another lecture. I am using the text available on poetryfoundation.org, and keep an eye on the right hand side of the screen that I am using for annotation and explanation. Commonly referred to as Immortality Ode or Ode on Intimations of Immortality, the poem's full title is, as you can see, Ode Intimations of Immortality from Recollections of Early Childhood. So we learn from the title that this poem is an ode. An ode is a kind of lyric poem of classical origin. This particular ode is a Pindaric one, that is written in the model invented by the Greek poet Pindar in the 5th century BC. An ode commonly develops through an impassioned address to someone or something, maybe an individual or a subject or an idea or an object or an event. Such a poem can be used to praise or to express an emotional outburst or to give voice to a psychological turmoil or to make philosophical reflections. And this particular form of poetry, that is ode, became very popular among the romantics. Now look at the other words and ideas used in the title. Intimations. Intimation may mean an announcement or a declaration which the poet is going to make in this particular poem. Then immortality. Immortality is something that is alien to our world. Our world is characterized by transience or impermanence. We mortals cannot experience immortality. Therefore, immortality may be an allusion to a perfect world of permanence. Then we have recollection. This is very important not only for this particular poem but also for Wordsworth. In Tinternabe also we saw the power or utility of recollection. It does not simply mean memory, rather it would mean mystical contemplation. Now we have the most important idea, childhood. Childhood here would mean a cult of childhood, which can be understood with the help of the idea of pre-existence, which we shall explain before we start reading our text. And each of these words or ideas used in the title is going to be key to the understanding of the poem. First, let us read the epigraph of the poem, then we shall talk about the idea of pre-existence. The epigraph is part of Wordsworth's poem My Heart Lifts Up. It is originally a 9-line poem, and the last 3 lines have been used as the epigraph. It reads, "The child is father of the man. and I could wish my days to be bound each to each by natural piety. What does it mean? The very first line is a paradox. There is apparent contradiction. How can a child father a man? Usually, a man can father a child, but using this paradox, poet suggests that the adult self is the result of the evolution of the childhood self. The sensitivity or essence of the childhood self is the seed to develop adulthood, and the poet wishes to remain in harmony with his childhood through his instinctive reverence for nature. Thus, the epigraph is the glorification of childhood, and our poem, which the epigraph summarizes in a nutshell, is going to be an exaggerated, impassioned, and fervent apotheosis or deification of childhood. But before we uh, start reading the poem, we must get familiar with a few ideas like pre-existence, which is also part of the philosophical and epistemological doctrine called innatism. But first, we need to spend some time on the figure of the child, or the idea of childhood, as it becomes one of the primary concerns among the Romantics. In the late 18th and early 19th centuries, the concept of childhood, or the unique entity of a child, got redefined, not only in the emergence of children's literature but also in the treatment of childhood or a child's experience in literature produced for grown-up readers. Especially William Wordsworth developed it into a sort of cult with universal celebration or glorification. But William Blake, unlike Wordsworth, it must be remembered, is known for his historically and politically contextualized treatment of childhood with the onset of Industrial Revolution. But from Blake we have come to understand childhood innocence as the binary opposite or antithesis of adulthood or worldly experience. In Wordsworth, this dualism is also found in the form of a tension between the urge to remain close to nature and the allurement of the material world, changing rapidly under the impact of industrial revolution and urbanization. Thus, in romantic imagination or in the policy of romantic literature, we find that the rational or the worldly or the materially calculative adult is believed to be far removed from nature, the glory of which can only be perceived by the imaginative or the irrational or the childlike mind, yet to be contaminated or tainted by rational concerns. The child's imagination and purity, according to the Romantics, enable it to remain close to nature before it gets dragged into the material world of rational thoughts as it would grow up to become an adult, alienated from nature. Thus, the loss of childhood is something of critical interest to the Romantics, and so is the achievement of rationality and adulthood. This process of growth is a journey for them, not only biological or psychological, but also spiritual. The sense of loss is all the more disturbing than the newfound vigor or sensuousness of youth. The loss of childhood would mean to lose the sync with nature, thereby losing the power of vision or imagination to behold or witness the glory or divinity of nature that remains hidden from the adults. Thus, adulthood is accompanied by the disadvantage, namely a communication gap between nature and a human being. Now, how did the Romantics develop this cult of childhood? Indeed, it is indebted to the idea of pre-existence. Plato believed in the pre-existence of soul. It means that at birth, the mind of a child does not remain blank or empty. Rather, it carries the knowledge, though subdued and shrouded, of a previous life. According to this view, before its birth, the soul existed in a perfect world, probably in close contact with God or a similar being, where it knew everything. Gaining knowledge is to discover this knowledge already encoded there in the mind. There is no question of learning something new, but learning means only to recall or remember this already known information. This is part of a philosophical and epistemological doctrine called innatism, developed by Plato and Descartes. They hold that the mind is already born with some pure and original ideas or knowledge or belief, but these remain locked or hidden. The process of learning through experiences or the use of our senses can only serve to unlock it.